Amber methane rain fell in long, whispering needles against the transparent panels of the Titan dome, making the world outside look like a melting dream. Inside the clinic queue, the air smelled faintly of bleach, metal, and old hope. Eli Garner shifted his weight, trying not to cough from the recycled dryness of it all. The antifungal meds for Max had doubled in price this month. He'd been ready to argue for a payment plan until the manager leaned in across the counter and said, almost too casually, "You're a practical man, Eli. Shelter 2 exchange students tonight, and we'll erase your bill." Eli's eyes followed the gesture toward the waiting bench. Two figures sat there, unmistakably not human. Tall for their age, smooth dark skin refracting dome light like oil on water, silver eyes wide but guarded. They had travel satchels bearing a crest that didn't match any corporate house Eli knew. Beside them, a woman in an oil-stained cloak crouched, her posture protective and deliberate. She plucked something small, a listening bead, from the wall outlet and crushed it with her thumb before rising to meet his gaze. Calm eyes, measured tone. "One night," she said, "and we'll be gone by dawn." Eli should have said no. Extra oxygen rations, liability if corporate security made a sweep, questions about unregistered species in family block. But then he thought about Max's dry, hacking cough and how the kid never complained. Not once. Even when his mother's old respirator hissed too loudly to sleep beside. Eli signed the agreement on the pad. "One night," he echoed, already feeling the mistake bloom behind his ribs. The walk home through the maintenance corridors was quiet except for the twins' soft, synchronized steps. The woman, Sarah Veck, she'd introduced herself, walked behind them with the calm alertness of someone who had survived too many betrayals to relax. When they reached Eli's block, he keyed open the pressure door and motioned them inside his unit. It wasn't much. 3 small rooms, all metal edges and insulation foam. But it was clean. Max's toys were lined along the shelf, handmade rover models from spare parts, labeled oxygen masks, neatly stacked thermal blankets. Every patch in the wall seal was sanded smooth. Sarah's gaze moved across the space with something that might have been approval. Max, barefoot and bright-eyed despite the hour, came running from the back room. "Dad, did they fix the—" He stopped short, eyes going wide at the sight of the twins. They looked back with perfect stillness. Eli knelt and kept his tone even. "Guests for one night. They're tired. Let's give them space, yeah." Max nodded, curiosity humming under his skin. He offered one of his toy rovers to the nearer girl. "It runs better on low-G floors," he said solemnly. The girl blinked, then smiled, quick and shy, and reached out with careful fingers to hold it. Sarah exhaled, a small, quiet sigh that carried both relief and surprise. The first trouble came less than an hour later, in the cafeteria line. Eli had insisted on feeding everyone properly. Ration pouches weren't much of a welcome. But word spreads fast in a dome where walls are thinner than trust. By the time they reached the counter, whispers had already curdled the air. "Freeloaders. Not from the colony, are they? Corporate won't like this." The serving clerk glanced at the twins' alien eyes and tilted the tray just enough that synth stew slopped across it, spattering their clothes. "Oops." Eli didn't flinch. He took the ruined tray, passed it to the twins, and handed them his own untouched plate. "Mix it," he told them gently. "It'll taste better that way." To the clerk, he said, "You might want to check your feed. You're leaking coolant from the dispenser." He pointed, calm as ever. The man looked down, distracted, and Eli quietly reached over the counter to pocket the cafeteria cam's data chip before it could malfunction. Sarah caught the motion. The smallest flicker of surprise crossed her composed face. No confrontation, no speech, just quiet reclamation of dignity. When they sat, she bowed her head slightly to Eli. "You handle insult as if it were maintenance noise," she murmured. He shrugged. "Noise is noise, only worth fixing if it spreads." Back home, Max showed the twins how to tether sleeping mats in low gravity, laughing when one drifted half a meter off the floor. The girls' laughter came out soft and musical, like water running through pipes. Sarah knelt beside them, helping adjust the tethers, her sleeves sliding back to reveal forearms marked with faint lattice scars. Old burns, healed with precision. Eli watched her move with the ease of someone who had done real work, not ceremonial tasks. When a faint tremor rattled the window, his head turned instinctively. "Pressure fluctuation," he murmured. Sarah's eyes followed his, curious. "How can you tell?" "Sound. The metal talks when it's nervous." He tapped the frame once. "Sensor noise, not breach." She smiled faintly. "You trust your ears more than instruments?" "I trust what's kept my son breathing this long." She didn't argue. She only watched the way his hands steadied against the panel, the sure, patient way he listened to the machinery like it was a living thing. Later, when the twins were asleep and Max's breathing had settled into the soft rhythm of dream, Sarah noticed a thin line of condensation tracing the ceiling corner. Wrong place. Wrong color. She stood, reached up with a small spanner from her cloak, and scraped away the frost. Underneath, a hairline crack glimmered where a coolant pipe had been nicked, deliberately. Eli was beside her before she spoke. He didn't ask how she knew. He just passed her the right wrench, as though they'd been working together for years. "Left thread," he said. She nodded. They patched it in silence, the hiss of sealing compound the only sound between them. When it was done, he wiped his hands and said, "Someone doesn't want you here." "Someone rarely does," she replied evenly. She started to explain. Something about a rival house, politics, debts owed. But he stopped her with a raised hand. "Don't need details tonight. Just need to know how many people might come knocking." Sarah studied him for a long moment. "You are very calm, Mr. Garner." He gave a dry half-smile. "When the hull leaks, panic's just extra weight." That earned the smallest laugh from her. Not mocking, just recognition. The twins shifted in their sleep, whispering in a language like sea glass tapping together. Sarah glanced toward them, the softness in her expression briefly unguarded. "They've been moved too many times," she said. "Every place says safe, until it isn't." Eli folded his arms. "Then let's make it safe until morning." At shift change, a hard knock echoed against the door. 3 quick taps, corporate security's rhythm. Eli straightened, the quiet in him turning to steel. Through the viewport, a foreman in a Kestrel Dynamics badge scanned the entry code strip. "Routine verification," the man said. "Housing check for unauthorized guests." Eli keyed the intercom. "Family block isn't your jurisdiction after 2200 hours. Company regulation supersedes colony charter." Eli smiled without warmth. "Funny. The charter says otherwise." Sarah stepped forward, cloak drawn, voice calm. "Hospitality law grants 24 hours of protection to declared guests." "Are you contesting that?" The foreman hesitated, half knowing, half guessing he'd walked into someone smarter than him. Behind his shoulder, another guard shifted uneasily. Titan's low gravity made movements oddly graceful. Even their intimidation dances looked rehearsed. "I'll note your interpretation," the man muttered finally, turning away. When the corridor lights dimmed again, Eli sealed the door and exhaled through his nose. Max peeked from the back room, eyes wide. "Are we in trouble, Dad?" Eli ruffled his hair. "Not yet, kiddo. Trouble's just a word for work we didn't plan." Sarah looked at him over the child's head. "You speak like an engineer." "Maintenance," he corrected. "Engineers write manuals. I keep the walls breathing." For the first time, Sarah's eyes warmed, a spark of something like admiration flickering beneath the discipline. "Then perhaps," she said softly, "we will survive the night." Outside, the methane rain intensified, tapping like impatient fingers. Inside, in the narrow space of a borrowed home, a human widower and an exiled alien measured each other in silence. 2 people who had lost too much to trust easily, but who understood the language of fixing what's broken. When the storm sensors finally flickered red, Eli set another patch on the wall and said, almost to himself, "One night? Huh." Sarah's answer was simple. "For now." Then the power blinked once, and the sound of distant boots echoed down the corridor. Corporate security hadn't gone far. Eli checked the seals, checked his son, checked the strangers who weren't strangers anymore, and waited, calm as a man listening to the dome's nervous heartbeat, for the next crack to mend. The first knock came before dawn, a dull thud against the pressure door that made the lights tremble in their sockets. Max stirred on the cot. One of the twins murmured in her sleep, and Eli's hand was already closing around the wrench he kept by the panel. Through the viewport, he saw two corporate security officers in orange kestrel suits. Their faces were calm in the way of people who never expected to be told no. "Inspection," one said, voice muffled through the comm. "Unregistered occupants in family block 6. Eli's tone was neutral. "Hospitality law gives me 24 hours. You're a few shy." The officer tapped something into his wristpad. "We've had complaints about power draw and safety violations." "That's so?" Eli leaned against the doorframe. "I'm the one who maintains the line. If there's a problem, I'll let you know." The second guard smiled, all teeth and arrogance. "You know what happens when people get clever with housing regs, Mr. Garner." Eli's hand stayed steady on the wrench. "Usually they fix your mistakes for free." The guards exchanged a look, muttered something about not worth the paperwork, and left. The door's lock lights returned to green. Behind him, Sarah stepped from the back room, robe half-fastened, eyes sharp. "You knew they wouldn't push." "Corporate guys hate overtime," Eli said, setting the wrench down. "Besides, bluffing's cheaper than bribes." She studied him, arms crossed. "You risked more than a fine." He shrugged. "I risked one more argument with a guy who doesn't read the rulebook. I'll survive." For a long second she didn't answer, then gave a small nod of acknowledgement. "You play this game well, human." He met her gaze evenly. "It's not a game when there's a kid involved." By midday the dome had that heavy, metallic quiet that meant a storm was brewing. The temperature gauge on the wall flicked between green and amber. Methane rain could scramble sensors, and Eli didn't trust the corporation's maintenance cycle to keep the systems balanced. He was supposed to clock in for his shift at the oxygen plant, but the message on his tablet was short. "Report to town hall, disciplinary review. 1,400 hours. Sarah saw it when he set the tablet down. "A hearing. They'll call it that. You will go." "Have to. When you skip, they call it guilt." Sarah inclined her head. "Then I will come. You're a guest, not a defendant. I am their excuse to summon you. I'll stand there too." Eli wanted to argue, but something in her tone stopped him. She'd spent her life in rooms like that, rooms where words cut sharper than blades. "Fine," he said, "but stay calm. They'll bait you." Her smile was thin. "They'll try." The hearing room was a circular space built for humiliation. Rows of colonists sat on benches while a hollow screen above them projected every word into the public feed. At the center, a dais for the Kestrel representative, a young man with smooth hands and two bright teeth. "Mr. Garner," he began, "we appreciate your cooperation. However, we must address reports of unsafe lodging and unregistered residents." Eli stood straight, palms resting on the rail. "I lodged guests under hospitality code. Section 3.4 permits temporary shelter in emergencies." The rep's smile didn't reach his eyes. "The code assumes guests are citizens or registered workers. These," he glanced toward the twins, "are neither." Sarah's voice slid through the air, low and precise. "Your own regulations define a guest as any sapient individual seeking safe rest within registered habitat zones. There is no species clause." A murmur rippled through the benches. The rep frowned, scrolling through his tablet. "That clause is outdated. Yet still active," Sarah said. "Perhaps update your systems before citing them." The room chuckled softly. The rep's composure cracked just enough for Eli to hide a smile. But then another man stood from the back. Kestrel Foreman Joran, the one who'd spilled stew on the twins. "You talk big about laws, alien, but you don't belong here. People like you bring trouble." Sarah's chin lifted. "And yet it was your facility that failed its last 3 safety audits." Joran's mouth opened, closed, then reddened. The audience tittered. Eli's amusement died when he noticed the security cam lights flash red. Recording flagged. Joran wasn't just mouthing off. He was setting her up. The rep tapped the table. Let's restore order. Mr. Garner, do you deny harboring foreign entities without reporting? I deny breaking any law, Eli said. If you want to accuse me, cite the code. Very well. Section. Before he could finish, an alarm bleeped through the hall. Low tone, repeating twice. Oxygen pressure dip. Eli's heart lurched. That tone meant a malfunction in sublevel corridors. The rep frowned, annoyed. This is a restricted. But Eli was already moving. That's the family block line. If it drops, your hearing won't matter. He grabbed his tool satchel, bolting for the door. Sarah followed without asking. They reached the maintenance lift just as warning lights began to strobe. The air tasted sharp, thin. Airlock valve malfunction, Eli said, scanning the readout. Could be sabotage, could be corrosion. Sarah crouched beside him, fingers dancing across the console. Pressure bleed, timed loop. Someone set it to open after the hearing began. Meaning us, Eli muttered. Together they slid into the crawlspace. Pipes dripped with cold condensation, fogging their visors. The hiss of escaping air was steady, like a slow leak in a lung. Sarah pointed. There. A coupling had been loosened, its thread warped deliberately. Eli braced himself against the wall, shouted, Left wrench! She already had it in her hand. He smiled despite the danger. Working in near silence, they reseated the coupling, sealed the leak, and rebalanced the pressure. The system lights blinked from red to green. Sarah wiped frost from her cheek. Timed sabotage implies intent. Kestrel wants a scapegoat, Eli said. And you're convenient. Not only me, she said. You as well. They crawled back through the narrow passage, emerging coated in cold vapor. Eli logged the repair, timestamped it, sent a copy to his private archive. The rep was waiting at the corridor's end, expression tight. Unauthorized interference with corporate systems, he said. Eli wiped his hands on his shirt. Unauthorized? You'd rather we suffocate. Protocol requires reporting to maintenance headquarters. I am maintenance headquarters. Eli shot back. You're welcome. The audience that had followed from the hearing snickered. The rep's jaw clenched. Sarah stepped closer, her voice a soft blade. Perhaps you'd prefer to commend him instead. The rep turned on her. Don't think clever words hide what you are. Sarah inclined her head slightly. No, they reveal it. For a moment no one breathed. Then an older miner in the crowd, broad shoulders, dust still clinging to his boots, stepped forward. She's right, he said. Guy's been fixing your leaks for years. Maybe thank him before the air runs out. He offered his own seat from the hearing bench to the twins, who were watching wide-eyed. The small act shifted something invisible in the room. Later, back in the quiet of the apartment, the four of them sat around the heater. The twins sipped nutrient tea. Max told them how he built his rover from scrap, and Sarah listened with an attentiveness that made the boy beam. When the kids were finally asleep, Eli pulled the data chip from his pocket and slid it toward her. Cafeteria footage. Proof that Foreman started the harassment. I sent a copy to a friend who's good with colony forums. Her brow furrowed. You expose him publicly? No. Told my friend to release it only if things turn ugly. Evidence is a shield, not a weapon. Sarah looked at him for a long moment, then said quietly, You choose restraint over revenge. That is rare. Eli gave a dry laugh. You're assuming it's restraint. Might just be laziness. But her small smile said she knew better. The dome trembled again as distant thunder rolled across Titan's haze. Sarah turned toward the sound. Another storm. Yeah, Eli said. A big one. As if on cue, the wall console chimed with an encrypted message. He opened it and frowned at the words flickering in amber. House vor Reclamation Unit inbound. Custody retrieval. Local midnight. Sarah read over his shoulder, face tightening. Vor, she whispered. They would come here? Seems they don't respect local bedtime. She straightened, eyes sharp again. Then we must prepare. Eli looked around his small, patched home. The worn chairs, the flickering heater, the sleeping kids, and felt a cold clarity settle in. He'd fixed broken walls his whole life. Maybe now he'd have to fix something bigger. Outside, the first drops of methane rain struck the dome, each one leaving a glowing mark before sliding away. The storm was coming, and it wasn't just weather. The methane storm hit faster than forecast. Thick amber clouds boiling over the dome. Flashes of static lighting up the colony like a broken lantern. Every pressure sensor in the block screamed at once. Eli's wrist console flooded with warnings. External turbulence, magnetic interference, localized calm blackout. Titan's version of a hurricane. He was used to weather that threatened to peel steel like fruit skin. But this one had an extra bite. House Vor's retrieval drones rode the wind like sharks on a current. He sealed the shutters and checked the seals. Max was already awake, sitting up with his emergency mask half-clipped, eyes wide but steady. "Same drill?" the boy asked. "Same drill," Eli said. "Stay strapped. Keep the twins calm." The girls, Eris and Luma, he'd learned, were quiet but alert, eyes bright as molten glass. Sarah stood by the window, cloak drawn tight, watching the storm lash against the transparent barrier. "Vor ships prefer distraction," she murmured. "They'll move under the storm's cover. You've seen them do this before. Too many times." He wanted to ask how many, but she was already pulling open his toolkit, scanning its contents with brisk efficiency. "You have tubing, condensers, anything to redirect carbon flow?" "Plenty." "Why?" "Because that isn't wind noise, it's siphon pulse." Eli froze, listening. She was right. Beneath the rumble of the storm came a slower, mechanical rhythm. A draw and release, regular as breath. He traced the sound mentally, visualizing the dome's guts. Scrubber system. Someone's bleeding CO2 into the service vents. "Sabotage," Sarah said simply. He looked at her, and she met his gaze with that royal calm that didn't need crowns. "Can you fix it?" she asked. "Maybe," he said, "but I'll need you." They moved fast. The power grid flickered as emergency generators kicked in. Eli led them through a maintenance hatch into the subbasement where condensation hung in shimmering curtains. The air was thin, edged with the metallic bite of leaked carbon. Sarah's breath fogged in the cold. Her gem-toned skin caught the faint blue of warning lights, reflecting them like fractured glass. Max followed, carrying the portable light. The twins stayed close, hand in hand, moving in silent mirror. It was eerie how steady they were. No whimpering, no panic. Children raised around discipline, Eli thought. Maybe royalty trains you early. The CO2 scrubber bank loomed at the end of the corridor, its panels blinking a confused amber. Eli knelt and popped an access plate. The internal flow rate was too low. Half the pressure vented to a side pipe. "Somebody built a siphon," he muttered, rerouting gas to the outside. Sarah crouched beside him, scanning the cluster of tubes. "Crude but effective. They've attached an external pump. We reverse the pressure, we fry their feed." He gave her a sidelong grin. "You think like a saboteur. I learned from them." He liked that answer more than he should have. Together they improvised a bypass. Sarah pulled flexible tubing from the heater vents. Eli stripped insulation wire from a broken panel. Max, perched on a crate, passed them tools with surgeon precision. The twins knelt beside him, holding the light steady. "Tell me when it glows red," Eli said. "Not before." "I know red," Eris said solemnly. Minutes stretched. The storm howled outside, pressurization thrumming under their feet. Sweat rolled down Eli's neck despite the cold. When Sarah tightened the final clamp, the system hummed deep, then steadied into its normal rhythm. "Flow stable," she confirmed. Eli sat back, breathless. "You ever thought about working maintenance?" "I prefer politics," she said dryly. "Less grime, same danger." He laughed, short and surprised. The sound seemed to ease the tension in the room. Even the twins smiled. Then the lights flickered twice. Eli's grin vanished. "That's the decoy sensor," he said. "They're probing the outer ring." Sarah stiffened. "They'll locate us through heat signatures." He scanned the nearby console. "Then we'll give them a false one." They hustled to the next chamber, a storage alcove filled with unused coolant drums. Eli yanked one open, inserted a heater coil, and rigged it to a motion sensor. "It'll read like 4 bodies huddled for warmth." Sarah blinked. "That's remarkably clever." He shrugged. "I've been poor my whole life. Poor people learn tricks." When the decoy's light turned green, the first impact rattled the dome. A dull clang like a stone striking glass. "Drones." Sarah pulled the twins behind a crate, shielding them with her cloak. Eli killed the main lights and gestured for silence. Through the ventilation slit, he saw a sleek, insectoid shape crawl along the dome's surface. Its lens glowed red, scanning for life heat. The decoy pulsed. The drone turned, lured by the fake warmth, and drilled through the wrong panel. Sparks sprayed. Then the decoy heater exploded in a burst of steam. The drone reeled backward, flailing. Sarah exhaled softly. "Effective." "Always is," Eli said. They retreated down a maintenance tunnel barely wide enough for one adult. Max led with the handheld light, the twins crawling right behind him. Sarah took the rear guard, her steps almost soundless. Halfway through, the hum of the dome changed pitch, a subtle drop that only maintenance techs noticed. "Pressure loss," Eli whispered. "Not structural. Targeted." Sarah's expression sharpened. "They're forcing us toward the docks." Eli cursed under his breath. "Then we do the opposite." They cut through a vertical shaft and descended to a service bunker that hadn't been used in years. Dust drifted like snow in low gravity. Old posters still clung to the walls. "Work hard. Breathe easy." He sealed the hatch behind them, setting the manual bolts. When the silence settled, he finally let himself sit. His pulse thudded in his ears. Max crawled into his lap, trembling but trying to hide it. Eli held him close. "You did good, kid." The twins huddled near Sarah, who crouched with the careful grace of someone trained for battle even without armor. In the dim light, her face was tired but resolute. After a long while, she spoke quietly. "You should know why they want the girls." Eli looked up. "I figured ransom, politics, or both." "It's more than that." Her voice softened. "Their father is King Oryx. He rules half the orbital colonies near Saturn. House 4 wants his bloodline on Titan to claim legal jurisdiction over mining routes. The girls are leverage for a treaty." Eli swore. "So they're hostages. Potentially queens, if captured." He stared at the twins, who were tracing circles in the dust. "They're just kids. Children born to power," Sarah said, "are never just anything." He rubbed his forehead. "And you? I was supposed to marry the king's cousin. Refused. Exiled. When I discovered Vor's plan to seize the girls, I took them and ran." Eli let out a long breath. "So, that makes you what, traitor or hero?" "Depends on who writes the report." The faintest smile curved his mouth. "Guess we'll write our own." Outside, the storm boomed again, low and heavy. Sarah watched the door, tense. "Vor won't stop. When this ends, there will be hearings, maybe battles. You don't have to stay involved." He shook his head. "You think I'm letting them take 2 kids after what they did to my wife? Not happening." Sarah's eyes softened. "You lost her to a breach." He nodded once. "Seal failed. Company blamed a random failure. I've seen the reports. It wasn't random. Someone skipped a weld to save a credit." "I'm sorry," she said. "So am I," he replied. "But it taught me something. Systems break because people let them. I don't let them anymore." For the first time, she smiled openly. "Then we are of one mind." The children had drifted into uneasy sleep by the heater coil. Eli adjusted Max's blanket and sat beside Sarah. The hum of the repaired scrubbers filled the space like a heartbeat. "You ever miss home?" he asked. "I miss gravity," she said with a faint laugh. "Real weight. Here everything feels half-finished, half-true. But sometimes," she glanced at the twins, Half is enough to start again. They sat in companionable silence until a low ping echoed from the wall console. A faint red light blinked, signal from the outside relay. Sarah moved first, activating it. A distorted voice emerged. New Chasma habitat. Respond. Identify occupants. Eli frowned. Not kestrel frequency. Vor doesn't request identification, Sarah said. This might be Oryx command. The light steadied, projecting text across the wall. Imperial transmission. House Oryx en route. Hold position. Relief surged through the room like oxygen after suffocation. But Eli's instinct nagged. If they can reach us, so can Vor. He was right. A metallic scrape reverberated above, followed by the hiss of cutting torches. The twins jolted awake. Sarah rose, drawing herself tall. They're breaching through the access vent. Eli handed Max the emergency mask. Into the side tunnel. Now. The door frame glowed red as heat spread. Sarah grabbed a coolant canister and cracked the valve, flooding the room with freezing vapor. When the vent burst open, the first drone slipped through. Sleek, angular, lens glowing. Eli swung his wrench, catching it square in the sensor. Sparks flew. The drone spasmed and collapsed. 2 more followed. Sarah hurled the canister, slamming it into the vent. Supercooled gas exploded outward, frosting the metal solid. For a moment, everything was white and still. When the vapor cleared, the breach was sealed in a sheath of ice. Eli leaned against the wall, panting. Sarah exhaled slow and steady. Temporary, she warned. Long enough, he said. In the lull that followed, Max's voice came small and steady. Dad, are they going to find us? Eli crouched beside him. Not tonight. The boy nodded, trusting him completely. That trust was a weight heavier than Titan's gravity. Later, when the storm's roar faded into distant echoes, Sarah found Eli by the control board, monitoring oxygen levels. They'll regroup, she said softly. I know. She hesitated, then added, if we survive this and Oryx comes, I can ask for your protection. They would grant you a title, a position. Safety. He looked up at her, tired smile tugging at his mouth. I don't need a title, just working air and a kid who sleeps through the night. Something in her expression melted. A small, fragile peace breaking through exhaustion. She sat beside him, shoulder brushing his. Then perhaps, she said, you already have what the powerful keep losing. Outside, lightning traced silver veins across the amber clouds. Inside, amid the hum of patched systems and the soft breathing of children, 2 people who had no reason to trust anyone found themselves leaning toward each other. Not with desperation, but with recognition. The dome's power flickered once more. Through the half-dark, Sarah caught Eli's gaze. They'll come again, she whispered. Then we'll fix it again, he replied. Above them, unnoticed in the noise of the storm, a single drone clung to the dome's outer frame. Its lens focused, whispering data to the horizon. And in its reflection, the faint outline of a royal crest glowed back. A signal broadcast to someone far away. The storm broke at dawn, but peace didn't come with it. Instead, the colony woke to a gray quiet full of dread, the kind that follows survival and waits for the other shoe to drop. Methane light filtered through the dome, making the air look the color of old amber. Eli hadn't slept. He sat at the table with a mug of bitter synth coffee, replaying sensor logs from the night. The siphon, the breach, the drones, everything screamed coordination. Someone inside Kestrel had been feeding Vor exact data. Sarah stood by the window, her cloak gone, wearing one of his old maintenance jackets that fit poorly across her shoulders. She looked more human like that, though the pale shimmer under her skin betrayed something otherworldly. The twins were curled up beside Max, still asleep. For once, their faces were peaceful. Eli rubbed his temples. We can't keep patching holes, he said quietly. They'll come back, and next time they'll bring paperwork. Sarah turned toward him. Paperwork. He gave a weary smile. Legal transfer orders, forged or not. Vor's smart, they'll switch from guns to pens. Pens worse. Paper makes theft look polite. Her expression darkened. Then they intend a hearing. Yeah, public this time. Make an example of the reckless maintenance chief who endangered the dome with aliens under his roof. She stepped closer. They will not succeed. Depends who writes the minutes. Before she could reply, the wall console chimed. Eli hesitated, then opened it. A new message, corporate encryption level 4. The header read, Employment Advancement Opportunity Confidential. He almost laughed. Kestrel's sense of timing was always impeccable. He read it twice, then a third time. Promotion to Habitat Director. Private Housing Dome. Lifetime health coverage. Full tuition for Max in the Colony Academy. All contingent on voluntary cooperation with relocation proceedings for non-registered entities currently under his care. Sarah saw the look on his face and came around the table. What does it say? Eli turned the screen so she could read it. She skimmed once, then let out a sound halfway between a sigh and a laugh. They tempt you with comfort. Comfort's expensive, he said. They just offered to pay my grief in installments. And will you take it? He met her eyes. Would you? Her silence was her answer. She pulled her gaze away, shoulders tight. I've received a similar offer. Eli leaned back. Let me guess. Return to the Empire? Forgiveness? All sins washed away? Her lips twitched, almost word for word. My king. She hesitated. My brother-in-law has sent an envoy. He will extract the twins and guarantee their safety. But only if I return with them. Alone. Eli felt something cold settle in his stomach. That's a polite way of saying they want you gone before you cause more trouble. They wish to contain the scandal. An exile's return is easier to explain than a foreign custody war. He studied her. And what do you want? Sarah hesitated long enough that he knew she didn't have an easy answer. I want them safe. After that, I haven't decided if I still belong anywhere. They were quiet for a long time. The hum of the heaters filled the silence. Max stirred on the couch, muttering in his sleep. Outside, methane flakes drifted like ash. At 0900 hours, the public summons came. Town hall hearing, emergency custody review. It wasn't optional. When they arrived, the same smug Kestrel representative from the last session was already waiting. Different badge, same face. Mr. Garner, he said with mock cordiality. And Miss Vec, was it? How lovely to see you both again. Sarah inclined her head. And yet you still mispronounce hospitality. He ignored her. We'll keep this brief. Corporate concerns have been raised about housing safety and unauthorized residents. We'll settle this efficiently. The hall was full this time. Miners, medtechs, families who'd heard rumors of last night's storm. Eli spotted the old veteran from before seated near the front, arms folded like granite. The rep began his speech, weaving half-truths with polished precision. Safety violations, power loss, unreported repairs. These actions, he concluded, constitute negligence unbecoming of a maintenance supervisor. However, he smiled at Eli. The corporation recognizes your potential. With proper guidance, you could serve the colony better in a more administrative role. Whispers rippled through the room. Eli stood still, hands behind his back, jaw tight. Meaning what, exactly? Habitat Director, the rep said smoothly. Effective immediately, if you sign transfer consent for the miners currently under your roof. You'll have housing, security, medical care. Your son will thank you. The silence that followed was almost reverent. Then Sarah stepped forward, voice like tempered steel. You would buy a father's integrity with square footage? The rep smirked. Integrity doesn't feed a child. Eli exhaled through his nose. Neither does surrender. The rep spread his hands. Think of your son, Mr. Garner. He deserves stability. Surely you don't want him growing up under scrutiny. That landed harder than it should have. For a moment, Eli's chest tightened. He could see Max's future, the warm house, the school, the safety he'd never had. It was everything he'd wanted for his boy. Everything his wife had died hoping for. Sarah saw the flicker of doubt cross his face. She said nothing, only touched his wrist lightly. A gesture small enough for the room to miss. Her fingers were warm, steady. A silent reminder. He looked at the rep again. "I appreciate the offer," he said quietly. "But no." The man blinked, then recovered. "Perhaps you misunderstood." "I said no," Eli repeated. "I don't trade people for promotions." A murmur rolled through the crowd. The rep's polite mask cracked. "Then you leave us no choice. Kestrel Dynamics hereby asserts emergency authority to relocate all unregistered residents for colony safety." Before Eli could respond, Sarah stepped forward, every inch of her radiating calm authority. Under Titan's charter, no such authority exists without a ratified judge. The rep smiled thinly. "Then meet your judge." From the side door, another figure entered, a woman in black robes, Kestrel insignia embroidered at the collar. Same corporate face, different costume. The audience gasped softly. The veteran miner muttered, "They don't even pretend anymore." The judge took her seat, eyes flat as glass. "Proceed," she said. Eli leaned toward Sarah. "Guess we're skipping due process." "Not entirely," she murmured. "I requested a recording of this session." She lifted her wrist device and pressed a single glowing rune. A soft chime confirmed activation. The hearing devolved quickly. Every accusation, every rebuttal, bounced off the judge like rain on a sealed dome. Sarah quoted law. Eli cited maintenance records. None of it mattered. The outcome had been written before they walked in. When the judge announced her verdict, immediate transfer of minors to corporate guardianship, Eli's stomach dropped. Sarah's voice cut through the air. "Appeal. Emergency review." "Denied," the judge said. Eli took a step forward, but Sarah stopped him with a look. Then she raised her wrist again. "Very well. The record stands." Her tone changed, colder, formal. "By invoking interhouse law, I request consular contact with House Oryx." A ripple spread through the crowd. The words consular contact meant royalty, empire, and jurisdiction far above Kestrel's pay grade. The judge faltered. "You have no proof of such authority." Sarah pressed a symbol on her wristband. Light bloomed above her palm. A golden crest, intricate and unmistakable. The seal of House Oryx shimmered in the air. "You were saying?" The room exploded in whispers. The judge stumbled back, her composure cracking. You're an exile, yes?" Sarah said coolly. "But still bound by oath. These children are royal heirs. Any attempt to seize them is an act of war under imperial law." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Kestrel guards reached for their weapons. The veteran miner was faster. He slammed his fist on his wrist pad, and every screen in the hall flickered to life, playing the footage Eli had hidden away. The cafeteria harassment, the sabotage timestamps, the night's airlock logs. Gasps rippled through the hall. "That's corporate tampering," someone shouted. Eli's heart pounded. "Guess the law still works when the right people are watching." The rep's face drained of color. "Cut the feed," he barked. Too late. The colony's public network had already mirrored it across every sector. The judge stood frozen, eyes darting toward the door. Sarah's voice carried over the chaos. "House Oryx acknowledges Titan Colony as neutral ground. Any harm to its citizens will be addressed directly by the throne." And then the comm feed screeched as a golden emblem filled the screen. The royal sigil, transmitted through the storm's thinning interference. A measured, commanding voice echoed through the hall. "To the citizens of New Chasma and the human called Eli Garner, my daughters were sheltered under your roof. You have our gratitude. By the bond of honor, no one will touch this colony without our sanction." Gasps turned to applause, scattered at first, then swelling. The guards hesitated, then lowered their weapons. The rep took a step back, sweating through his collar. Eli glanced at Sarah. Her eyes shone with relief and something deeper, an emotion she'd been too disciplined to show until now. He touched her elbow gently. "You planned this." "Planned," she said softly, "and hoped." The king's message continued. "All who aided in the defense of my heirs are under royal protection. All who plotted their capture are subject to imperial inquiry." The feed cut abruptly, leaving the hall buzzing with aftershock. In the stunned silence that followed, Sarah turned to the crowd. "Let the record show," she said, "that Titan's strength lies not in its metal, but in its people." The miner cheered. Others joined, their voices rising like the storm outside. Eli stood beside her, dazed, exhausted, but lighter somehow. He could already see the fallout coming: investigations, scapegoats, politics. But for the first time in years, none of that scared him. The Kestrel rep gathered his papers with trembling hands. "This isn't over," he hissed. Sarah met his glare. "It never is. But for now, it's yours to explain." When the crowd began to disperse, Eli and Sarah lingered at the edge of the dais. The dome's light filtered through the windows, turning her skin to soft gold. "You had that crest all along," he said quietly. "I needed proof first," she replied. "You gave it to me." He nodded. "Guess that makes us even." Her eyes softened. "No, Eli. It makes us allies." Outside, the storm clouds broke completely, revealing Titan's pale sun. For a moment, the dome glowed like glass newly cleaned of soot. The hearing hall was still echoing when the doors sealed behind them. Even after the king's transmission had ended, the air felt charged, alive with disbelief and relief and something else: possibility. Eli could hear people outside, their voices overlapping in half-whispers. "A king," he said, "a king. Garner, the maintenance guy? Those girls are royalty?" Titan had never felt smaller or larger at once. Sarah stood beside him at the base of the stairs, shoulders squared but eyes distant. The glow from the hall lights caught in the metallic flecks of her skin, turning her into something between human and myth. The twins clung to her cloak, still pale from the confrontation. Max held one of their hands without thinking, protective even in exhaustion. Eli ran a hand through his hair, exhaled, and said softly, "You realize we just made ourselves the most interesting problem in the solar system." Sarah's mouth curved faintly. "Problems draw solutions. Or enemies. Usually both," he muttered. They walked the narrow corridor out of the administrative wing. Kestrel officers avoided their eyes. A few colonists nodded respectfully. Rumor traveled faster than methane through a cracked pipe. By the time they reached the outer dome, the story would already have changed shape twice. When they stepped outside into the amber daylight, the rain had stopped. A thin fog hovered above the surface like breath. The dome's lights reflected off wet panels, making everything shimmer. Eli stopped at the railing overlooking the colony's power yard. From here, the dome stretched like a glass horizon, half shelter, half prison. "You could leave now," he said quietly. "You've got your king's protection, a royal escort inbound. You don't have to stay on this rock." Sarah leaned on the rail beside him, her posture deliberate. "Still. Leave what? A home I built from scraps and guilt? I have no wish to return to people who measure loyalty in convenience." "You'd trade a palace for this?" She glanced sideways at him. "A palace has walls. You repair domes. Both keep people breathing, but yours does it with purpose." He tried not to smile, failed anyway. "You've got a strange way of giving compliments. It's the only way that matters." They stood in silence while the colony settled back into rhythm. Overhead, the clouds thinned to reveal Saturn's faint curve through the haze. For the first time, Titan looked almost peaceful. Then Eli's wrist console buzzed. A new message. No header this time, just coordinates and a single sentence. "Corporate units regrouping at perimeter." He sighed. "Guess the paperwork didn't kill all the snakes." Sarah straightened. "Vor won't risk open conflict here. Not after the broadcast. Maybe not, but Kestrel might. They'll call it cleanup. Make it look like sabotage again." He looked toward the dome's maintenance grid. "If they take down the CO2 line now, the whole lower block suffocates before sunrise. Then we repair it," she said simply. He turned to her. "You sure? You've done your part." She met his gaze without blinking. "You said once that panic is extra weight. Let's not carry it." He almost laughed. "All right then, you're whatever you are. Let's go save the neighborhood again." They gathered tools, sealed their suits, and left Max with the twins under the veteran miner's watch. The man saluted Sarah awkwardly. "Ma'am, if they send more goons, I've got a spanner with names on it." Sarah inclined her head. "Spare them if you can. Even fools breathe the same air." The miner grinned. "You sound like the old Titan codes." Eli smirked. "She reads the fine print." The maintenance corridor was cold, the floor slick with condensation. They moved quickly, following the rhythmic hiss of compromised vents. The deeper they went, the louder the sound became. A drawn-out wheeze, the dome itself struggling for air. When they reached the CO2 nexus, Eli saw the damage immediately. 2 access valves melted from inside, burned clean. Someone had used plasma cutters. The system's failsafe loop was seconds from collapsing. "Manual override?" Sarah asked. "Won't help. Need a full reroute." "Show me." He brought up the schematic, projected it on the wall with his wrist unit. "If we divert pressure through the northern conduit, we can isolate the breach. But the control nodes are outside the dome skin." Sarah didn't hesitate. "Then we go outside." Eli hesitated. Low pressure, unsteady gravity, storm debris still in the air. One wrong seal and we're frozen meat. "You've done worse," she said softly. He looked at her for a long moment. Then quietly, "Yeah, with less company." They cycled through the airlock. Titan's surface opened before them. A sea of amber mist, methane dunes glimmering like liquid glass. The dome's curved skin rose behind them, faintly glowing where the interior lights pressed outward. Every breath in the suit echoed in Eli's ears. Sarah moved with uncanny grace despite the half-gravity, every step calculated. They reached the external nodes, 3 massive spires half-buried in frost. The first one sputtered erratically, sending little puffs of white gas into the void. Eli crouched, attaching the clamp line to his belt. "I'll patch the first. You monitor flow." "I'll do more than monitor." She crouched opposite, scanning telemetry. Her alien eyes glowed faintly as she spoke. "Flow drop 40%. Stabilize now." He pulled the panel off and hissed. The circuit inside was molten. "They fried it completely. Can you replace it?" "Not out here. I can bypass the melt with conductive gel." "Do it." He popped the tube open, smearing silver compound across the joint. The storm light flashed against the gel like quicksilver. As he worked, Sarah's voice came steady over comms, calm, grounding. "When I was young, they trained us to fix orbital gates blindfolded. You learn to feel systems through vibration." He grunted. "Sounds familiar. You were an engineer?" "Maintenance, not design. But metal talks if you listen." She smiled through her visor. "Then hear this." She tapped her gauntlet against the node. A low hum rippled through the metal, the sound of current redistributing. "Flow stabilizing," she murmured. "Keep pressure steady." He did. The node lights flickered green. They moved to the second spire, then the third, each one worse than the last. Time blurred into a rhythm of work. Open, patch, seal, test. Their movements synced like choreography. The storm wind howled over them, throwing thin waves of dust. At the last node, the ground trembled. Eli looked up. In the distance, a Kestrel drone crawled over the ridge, lights blinking red. It wasn't alone, 3 more followed, armed, scanning. Sarah saw them too. "We can't finish before they reach us. Then we buy time." He tossed her his welder. "Torch the ridge behind them. That dust's flammable enough to blind sensors." She aimed the welder, a clean arc of blue fire against orange sky. The methane particles ignited in a controlled wave, curling around the drones like fog lit from within. They hesitated, confused by the sensor overload. Eli slammed the last circuit plate shut. "Done. Flow stable," she confirmed. "System reading full pressure." "Then we run." They sprinted toward the airlock, boots skidding on frost. The drones regained bearings, chasing. One fired a stun charge. It cracked against the dome's skin just above Eli's head. Static danced across his visor. He stumbled, dropped to one knee. Sarah turned back instantly, grabbed his arm. "Move." "I'm fine," he gasped. "Your suit seal's damaged." I said I'm fine. But her voice went sharp, command-like. "Eli Garner, move." The name in her mouth hit different, formal, protective, furious. He obeyed. They reached the lock, tumbled inside, slammed the inner door. Air hissed back into the chamber. For a long time, neither spoke, just listened to the roar of returning pressure. When the indicators turned green, Eli tore off his helmet, breathing hard. "Remind me never to argue with royalty." Sarah removed hers more slowly, eyes still bright from adrenaline. "Remind me never to underestimate humans." He laughed, a ragged, relieved sound. "You'll fit in fine here." Inside the colony, the alarms faded one by one. The scrubber system's hum deepened to its normal rhythm, a mechanical heartbeat restored. On the monitors, the power grid lit up green across all sectors. They walked back through the corridors in silence. The miners they passed nodded with open respect now. No one called the twins freeloaders anymore. Someone even saluted Sarah. At the residential wing, Max came running. "Dad!" He threw himself into Eli's arms, voice muffled against the suit fabric. "They said you went outside. You're not supposed to go outside." Eli ruffled his hair. "Someone had to keep the lights on." Sarah knelt beside the twins, checking their foreheads, whispering in their native tongue. They giggled, reassured. The sight made Eli's throat tighten in a way he didn't expect. When the children were safe and fed, Sarah and Eli returned to the quiet of the maintenance deck. He leaned against the bulkhead, exhaustion catching up. "What now?" he asked. "Now," she said softly. "We build something that lasts," she explained. The king's envoy had offered safe passage for her and the twins. She could go home, reclaim her station, maybe even a seat at the court. In return, she'd oversee Titan's conversion to an Oryx protectorate. "Your colony would prosper," she said. "Technology, medicine, resources, all yours." He stared at her. "And the cost?" She hesitated. "The cost is staying where decisions are made, not where lives are lived." "You'd have to leave." She nodded. "And you could come. The king has extended protection to your family." He rubbed a hand over his face. "Sounds nice. Fancy beds, clean air, a title I'd never use. It would be safe." He looked up, tired eyes meeting hers. "Safety's not living. My kids got roots here. These people, miners, welders, medtechs, they finally started believing the system can be fixed. If we leave, Kestrel will crawl back the moment no one's looking." "You'd stay?" He shrugged. "Somebody's got to keep the bolts tight." She smiled faintly. "You are either brave or foolish. Usually both." Sarah was silent for a long moment. Then she took off the small crest from her wrist and set it on the table. "Then I will stay too. The king can have his emissaries. I choose my own ground." Eli blinked. "You sure? That's your ticket home." "I have a home," she said. "It just happens to smell like machine oil." He laughed, softer this time. "Welcome to Titan, then." Later, as dusk fell, if Titan had such a thing, they stood at the observation deck. The dome glowed gold in the stormlight. Below, workers repaired power conduits, kids chased each other through the walkways, and for once the air felt a little cleaner. Sarah rested her hands on the railing. "The king will not be pleased." "He'll get over it," Eli said. "Kings usually do." She turned to him, studying the lines of fatigue and quiet pride etched in his face. "When this began, I thought of you as ordinary. Appreciate that. Now I see you are rare." He met her gaze. Careful. That almost sounded like affection. Her lips curved. "Almost." They stayed there a long while, saying nothing, watching Titan storms drift like slow oceans. Somewhere far above, the Oryx flagship still orbited, waiting for an answer that wouldn't come. Down here, life resumed. Imperfect, unglamorous, alive. Weeks later, New Chasma's maintenance records listed a new department, Practical Systems Engineering, co-managed by Chief Garner and Senior Consultantess Vec. Oxygen stability increased 18%. School attendance rose. Complaints fell. The colony had a future now, not just survival. On rest days, Eli and Sarah walked the maintenance rings. She'd teach Max and the twins to read old Earth novels. He'd show them how to fix a compressor with nothing but wire and willpower. They laughed more. The sound echoed through the corridors like something sacred. One evening, when the lights dimmed for night cycle, Sarah stopped beside the viewport. Titan's endless haze glowed faintly under Saturn's reflection. "You never took your promotion," she said. "Didn't need to," he replied. "Turns out I got the better job." She looked at him, eyes warm and quiet. "And what job is that?" He smiled. "Keeping this place breathing, and the people in it honest." She considered that, then nodded. A worthy position. Outside, the wind whispered over the dome, soft and steady, no longer angry. The storm had passed, but the sound remained. A reminder that survival, like love, was a choice made daily. And when the next dawn came, dim and orange and full of promise, Titan held its breath only for a moment before exhaling again, alive and whole.